and welcome to each and all. It's exactly 9 o'clock. I'm going to ask you to envision yourselves here in Miami-Dade Central Plaza. People are entering here from the north, from the south, from the east, from the west, saying hello. Many of you are starting to gather towards the central fountain from whence all this great information of pools and tools will flow. Make sure you've got a good seat. Make sure you're ready to take some good notes, remembering that you can always go back to our website and review our impact collaboratives. This one will be up, by tomorrow morning. You can take pieces of them, share these resources with others, take good notes, because hocus pocus focus, as my team likes to laugh when I say, we are here to put on our gender lenses, to use them to focus on women and girls in our community. Please say hello to one another in the chat. This is your Women's Fund. Share information about what you're doing in the community. Share questions. This is your safe space to ask, I need help. I don't know where to get this for myself or for somebody that I work with in my community. Please, if we don't know the answer here, there's likely to be somebody here at your Impact Collaborative who's willing to help you find what you can do. All right. So speaking of amazing people who are willing to help other people do things, it's our 20-woman strong, amazing board who are behind this Impact Collaborative. Lots of people behind the scenes. Many people will be here with us today. And moving forward, we have to say special thanks to, there's so many community partners here. Many folks have signed up from government agencies who are participating and supporting our community. Thanks to each and every single one of you. Many direct service providers, you know who you are. Thank you. The amazing Marilyn Gladstone, our founder, who does not miss one, even though sometimes she doesn't show up early in the morning. She always sees the replay. And our donors, large and small, we cannot do this without you. Let's special shout out to the Scala family and 1 Billion Rising, who empower this entire Impact Collaborative series. And for our economic mobility pillar, which we are focused on today, Shannon Altman and Kaufman Rawson take things seriously. They always put their money where their mouth is. And we thank you, Janet. We thank you, Kaufman Rawson. Speaking of fueling, and speaking of the Miami Foundation and dancing on November 18th, please fuel our mission on Give Miami Day. Our power hour happens to be 2 p.m. on the 18th, but you can start donating as early as November 15th. Just a little whisper to some friends that we might have in the Miami Foundation, a power hour, especially for programs that support women and girls in 2022 could be really amazing. Just floating an idea. Here we go. And impact agents. What does that mean? Volunteers who really sign up to say all the time, we're going to be there. We're going to be there. Many of you are here in the audience. We thank you to join that volunteer corps, who's spearheaded by Gami, who's one of our folks and our staff that you met early. Some of you met earlier. Please go to our website or scan here to join our volunteer corps, Impact Agents. Onward, we've got some bragging to do. Viviana Alvarado Pacheco is working with us and Dr. Muriel Cheva from our board to create this amazing dashboard. Your Women's Fund is collecting and presenting data like this, economic mobility information, with a laser sharp focus on women and girls. It's early days, we've just launched, but we promise to work collaboratively with all of you and with the help of Viviana and Dr. Cheva to be relentless in collecting the information about what you should know about the status of women and girls in our community, and then share in impact collaboratives and in other ways what you can do about it. And to focus this conversation, we welcome first our amazing board member, Joanne Godoy. Good morning, Joanne. Take it away.
Good morning, Maria. Thank you so much for that intro. And I will say good morning, good day, good evening, in case people watch this later, to our old friends, new friends, and partners in Impact. If you're here, either right now or watching this, it means that you truly care about the present and the future of women and girls in Miami and beyond. So for that, we thank you. Thank you for either being one of those women that is propelling things forward, or being an ally to make sure that we're fostering an equitable society. So I have a couple of slides here prepared so that you can follow along. And I was given the task to open up this powerful conversation so that we can all talk about economic mobility, women's economic mobility in particular, and how to advance and promote it. So before we do that, I want to ground us all on what economic mobility is to make sure that we're all speaking the same language this morning. So as you can see there, this definition is not mine, right? You see the source all the way at the bottom. But basically, economic mobility is how someone's economic well-being changes over time. So most often, economic mobility looks at how someone's income changes over their lifetime. But it's not only upwards, right? It's literally how it moves throughout their lifetime. So when that income improves over their life, right, that person is considered upwardly mobile. But by contrast, when someone's income stays flat or decreases over their life, that is being considered downwardly mobile. So when we're talking about economic mobility, you could zoom in and zoom out as many ways and as many times you want. Because when we talk about women's economic mobility, we could talk about which women, how much are they moving, how fast are they moving, and measure it in many different ways, right? Like we could talk about households, or we could talk about women as a geographical population, we could talk about locations, etc. So over time, when you look at women's economic mobility as a group, we have definitely advanced, right? But so we could stay with those numbers and say, bravo, right? Like we've been making progress throughout the years. But when you zoom in, we still know a couple of things. And I want you to follow along with me in this slide. These are recent facts that the UN Women has shared. And I'm going to slow down here on purpose because I want all of these numbers to hit you hard. The first one says that women still tend to spend around 2.5 times more time on unpaid care and domestic work than men. It's literally like we're doing twice the work or more than a typical man at home. So even though we might be outside working and gaining an income, we still have a double shift or triple shift, right? If we look at number 2, women are still less likely to have access to social protection. We don't feel safe in the streets, right? The US might not be the case, but almost everywhere else in the world, we still hear, don't walk by yourself at night. Women are less likely than men to have access to financial institutions or have a bank account even. The digital divide remains a gender one, for sure. And last but not least, women are less likely to be entrepreneurs and face more disadvantages starting businesses. So that's when we look at global numbers, right? So let's keep zooming in and go to Miami-Dade and the next slide too. It is no difference. There's no big difference here, right? So these are screenshots of that dashboard that Mario was talking about, right? So through this research project that the Women's Fund just launched, you could access some of these numbers that will help you identify some of the gaps and therefore the opportunities to advance women in Miami-Dade. So you could see there the poverty rate, you could see there the gaps in income inequality, and so forth. So why do I start with this, right? Like why so realistic? Why so pessimistic, if you want to see it that way? Why should we care? So first of all, I think it's the right thing to do when women make up more than 50% of the world's population, right? And what we've done hasn't been enough. But if you care about the numbers, it is also a very smart thing to do, because when more women work, economies grow, and our economic empowerment is central to achieving whatever goal a community wants to achieve. And I have 2 very concrete examples for you. So increasing the female employment rates in the OECD countries to match that of Sweden, right, which is one of the countries that's more advanced when it comes to gender equality, it could boost the GDP by over $6 trillion. But not only you can increase the GDP of these countries, right? But conversely, it is estimated that gender gaps cost the economy some 15% of the GDP. So we're not only not making that money, we're losing the money by not giving equal opportunities to women. So this slide has an affirmation, right? Good news, we've got this, especially if we all focus on the same things and we advance forward. So let me keep zooming in to the US. And it is women's foundations that have a long history of working to address women's economic security and mobility within their own communities across the country. And this Women's Fund is no exception. So after a year like the pandemic, we are coming back hard with many things to offer you, right? So the first one is that we're drawing attention to women's physical, political, economic autonomy. We know that these three pillars are very key for women's advancement and therefore our community's advancement. Then through this dashboard that we just talked about, we can now better understand where are the holes that we want to fill and how we can do that. But two other things. One, when we looked at that landscape of who's doing what when it comes to women and girls in Miami-Dade, we couldn't really find a thing. So recently, the Women's Fund published a landscape of more than 100 organizations that are working in Miami-Dade only, working towards the advancement of women and girls, all the way from human trafficking and fighting violence, all the way to business development. And grants will come back soon. But I won't steal the thunder and I'll let my friends share that later. But I want to draw the attention in moments like this, right? This impact collaboratives. Because yes, those numbers are real. Yes, there are gaps to fill. But as I said, the good news is that there are many leaders and many organizations like the ones that you're going to hear from now that are doing great work. So up next, we're going to get to learn from those current efforts in Miami-Dade, focused today on economic autonomy and hear how Miami women can benefit from the efforts of our friends at the Miami Foundation, Catalyst Miami, and Urban Impact Lab. So it's time to pay attention. I hope you're awake by now, that you have coffee and tea in your hands, because what we have for you up next is not only so that we, the women here, that I see you in the chat, we can continue to make moves, but most importantly, so that we can accompany other women in their economic mobility journey too. So I'll leave you with this phrase, that women's economic mobility affects us all. It most certainly can benefit us all, but is definitely a responsibility of us all. So back to you, Maria.
Wide awake, and there are a lot of live wires in this Central Plaza. I can see the attendee list, not only in the chat, but there are a lot of really strong forces of nature and forces in our community here with us today. So I think you've got the right audience, Joanne, and I am focused in letting everybody know what this is. Remember, this is your Women's Fund. Remember, this is your impact collaborative. There are 3 polls that are going to be active. We ask you to please participate because it does matter. Measurement matters and exchange of information matters. So please do join all of the polls, and we're going to move forward here today with a request for each of our brilliant panelists to do the incredible feat of introducing themselves in 2 minutes or less. How do they do that? By limiting themselves to the context of why they're here today. And we are going to ask you to lead away, Lindsay.
Thank you. And I am thrilled to be here today. I'm Lindsay Linzer, Managing Director of Community Investments at the Miami Foundation, here on the screen with some of my favorite women in Miami that I've gotten to collaborate and work with over the years. So thank you for having me. For those of you who don't know, the Miami Foundation is a community foundation, and we call ourselves the Foundation for Miami. We are working at the foundation to build the philanthropic, civic, and leadership backbone for Miami and its residents. We do that by leveraging our networks, our resources, financial and otherwise, to bring together nonprofits, government, philanthropists, to address community issues that are really critical to a future for Miami. Some of these issues we address through grant programs, like you may know through our Community Grants Annual Opportunity, which each year we award grants. This year was $2.2 million to over 100 nonprofits working in the areas of opportunity for children, youth, health, education, inclusion, environment. But then we also are focused in other ways that are not necessarily grant opportunities, but we're really laser focused on equity. And so we're bringing together those partners that we work with to address issues like racial equity, like digital equity, job equity, which you're going to hear about from Olivia in just a moment, and music equity. And so we address those through special collaborations, and Miami Connected, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later today, is one of those. So our goal is to work together with community to have a bigger impact than any one of us could do alone. And so looking forward to diving in with you shortly.
Stronger together, indeed. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Olivia Brown, welcome. Welcome to Miami.
Speaking of the Miami
here.
Foundation. Speaking of the Miami Foundation and collaborations that we host, hello everyone. I'm excited to be here as well. My name is Olivia Brown and I serve as the Labor Miami Fellow at the Miami Foundation. I have an entire presentation that describes what Labor Miami is, and I won't spill the beans too early, but I am excited to be here and collaborating with all of you. Thank you for having me again.
Thank you for being here, and thank you, Marta. It's a busy day for you. Welcome.
Hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Marta Viciedo. I am the co-founder of Urban Impact Lab, and Urban Impact Lab is a local civic innovation firm. Essentially, the best way to probably think about us is we are a moth to a flame for community issues that are complicated, that have lots of layers, and we really dig in for the betterment of our community, to make sure that our communities are thriving and that our quality of life is ever improving. Today, I will be here specifically talking about one of our largest programs that has popped up because of the pandemic, and that is Access Helps. Access is a economic resource navigator, and essentially anything that has to do with individuals that need help with paying rent or that need access to financial resources, and also small businesses. Small businesses is actually where we're spending the majority of our time at this point. Small businesses that need any type of assistance, economic, finance, access to lending, things like that. We essentially help a number of small businesses navigate. At this point, we have about 80,000 local users, which has been sort of an extraordinary opportunity to get to know so many small businesses across Miami-Dade County, and really bring a face to that sentiment that small businesses are the lifeline of our economy. Having had the opportunity to talk to so many, it's not just the lifeline, it's the personality and the color of our community. So I will be talking a little bit more about that today. And thank you to the Women's Fund team and to my fellow panelists. It's wonderful to see you all this morning.
I have to say, you talked about how Access Helps works with the things that are complicated in Miami. The Women's Fund talks about complex issues. And so how each and every one of you are providing resources to address things that are complicated helps the complexity of moving forward women and girls in our community. What amazing gift to leverage all these resources together. This is such a terrific morning. And Natalie, please take it away. Lots to leverage with you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces here and familiar names on the screen, and happy to get to know those of you that I'm not familiar with. So my name is Natalie Castellanos. I'm the Senior Director of Community Health and Financial Wellness at Catalyst Miami. Catalyst Miami, for those of you who are not familiar, is an organization that is dedicated to collectively identifying and solving for issues that are adversely affecting low wealth communities across Miami-Dade County. We are deeply committed to justice and equity to ensure that all of our communities can thrive. A little quick personal background, although I consider myself a longtime family member of the Catalyst Miami team, I just joined this week to launch or to support the Prosperity Campaign, which is a longtime program that has run at Catalyst Miami since 2003. Some have called it the heart of the organization, and it is dedicated to providing services around health, financial well-being, and small business support to ensure that family and small businesses are able to thrive in our community. I'll share just quick background. So I went to FIU Law School here locally and have mostly worked in health-related settings. I consider myself an advocate at heart, and I bring that lens even to service delivery. And I'm just thrilled to be on this panel of amazing women who inspire me so much every day, and looking forward to today's conversation.
And on we go. We are going to ask each of you in the same order to go ahead and tell us why we need what we need. What are the issues that you're seeing with your community? And we're going to ask you to take that away, Lindsay.
Thank you. So Miami Connected is a collaborative to bring free broadband internet connectivity, digital literacy, and career opportunities to more than 100,000 students and families in Miami-Dade County. So how did this come to be? So in the wake of COVID-19, as our community was dealing with tremendous loss and dealing with unfathomable challenges, we were working really hard at the Miami Foundation to raise funds to address those challenges, to be a good partner to community, and just generally be responsive to the needs of community. And so in some cases, that was as simple as kind of making grants and making funding available to nonprofits to provide access to food and healthcare. But then other times, like there were bigger challenges, that we're facing, that our community was facing, that just were not as easily solvable. That wasn't just as simple as like, let's make a grant to this organization to do this. And so we were looking for really big, bold solutions. And we saw that students weren't able to attend school because they didn't have online access. People weren't able to connect to their jobs remotely because it wasn't safe to go in person, but they didn't have online access at home. And so they could not participate in the workforce. And so seeing that happen in our community really struck a chord at the Miami Foundation. And so also we had just come up of a big census project in partnership with many of the folks on this call. And we knew from the census data that 1 in 5 Miami-Dade students actually lacked home internet access. And unfortunately, it was low-income students of color that were more likely to be disconnected. So amidst COVID, while we're working from home, we started researching and learning about models across the country from other cities that were starting to work on these large-scale broadband access solutions. And so in partnership with Achieve Miami, a host of funders, both locally and actually nationally around the country, the foundation worked during COVID at home to raise $11 million to launch Miami Connected and tackle digital inequity in Miami. And so later in the presentation, when we talk about the solutions, I'm going to dive deep into like what exactly we're doing as part of Miami Connected to address those inequities, which solutions we're employing.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Olivia.
So similarly to how Lindsay was describing the origin of Miami Connected, labormiami.org has similar origin stories. So the Miami Foundation, as Lindsay kind of described a little bit earlier, really aims to address community needs. And labormiami.org is one of the things that addresses those community needs, and those needs being having a centralized resource for economic resources. And what I mean by that, and to describe Labor Miami a little bit more, again, not to go too deep because we have an entire presentation, but labormiami.org is a centralized, easy to access and comprehensive tool that helps Miamians identify and access resources they need to thrive in Miami-Dade County. And essentially this comes because working very closely with this resource, I've realized that there is no shortage of resources in Miami-Dade County. We have lots of organizations and lots of leaders who are very committed to the economic development of our community, However, on the end user side of things, it can be very tiresome and confusing to kind of navigate all of these moving parts. And like I described a little bit earlier, we will have an entire Labor Miami presentation, but Labor Miami is kind of that labor of love that comes in and tries to ease that burden and kind of ease that pressure point where people are confused and not really knowing where to access these things. And I think that that is one of the kind of key issues that I've noticed in this space where we have all of these things, all of these moving parts that exist, and all of this great work is happening, but the issue now is how to get it to those people. And Labor Miami is one of the ways that we at the Miami Foundation attempt to get it to the people who need it.
Terrific. Marta.
So for the purposes of today's conversation, as I mentioned, I will focus on Access Helps, which is, I guess, described similarly. It's an economic resource navigator. I am going to lean heavily onto the small business and entrepreneurship side of Access Helps and the resources therein. But really, let's talk about the problem, right? Because just to address that segment. Part of it is entrepreneurship, starting a small business has always been considered a pathway, maybe not for extreme or great wealth creation, but it definitely has been a traditional pathway for the development of stability within your family, for growth, for financial sort of stability, again, and perhaps wealth. However, in Miami, which is an enormous entrepreneurial center, right? We are inching ever closer to 100,000 small businesses within our county. But while we rank very, very high in terms of small business and startup entrepreneurial activity, we rank near the bottom with regards to scale and growth. So that means our businesses really, really struggle. And so, as I said a second ago, we're inching ever closer to 100,000 small businesses, but over 65,000 of those businesses, they have less than $5 million in revenue and less than 20 employees. And the vast majority, we're talking about less than 4 employees and less than $1 million in revenue. So when you're thinking about a small business and being able to grow and being able to hire people, being able to contribute to our community's ability to sustain itself, the growth of small businesses actually becomes quite important. And how that relates specifically to women, John spoke a little bit about the difficulties that women have entering the entrepreneurial landscape. And that's very real. Part of it is because women tend to start businesses that are considered informal. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the challenge arises when you have a pandemic. And now maybe part of the way that your livelihood has been sustained is by producing food at your home, empanadas, let's say, and you sell those, and you have like this little thriving small business. This is how you pay the bills and put food on your table. But you've never really formalized an economic relationship with a bank. Actually, as a matter of fact, you're not doing accounting because it's kind of an informal system. And so when a pandemic comes and you're all of a sudden shut down, PPP can't help you because you don't have the paperwork necessary to prove that you've been generating this income. And an SBA EIDL loan that that helps so many people can't help you either. As a matter of fact, you probably can't even apply for one of the small city grants that can sustain you over a couple of months. And so that is where Access was born. At the very early stages of the pandemic, we were tapped by Microsoft and Citi to develop this economic navigator, make sure people were not missing out on the opportunities. And it really was an immense effort to make sure that not just people could find, like it's not a listing of things, we help people navigate and understand how they can access those resources. And I will talk a little bit more about that. But the undercurrent of it is essentially making sure that moving forward, it's not just looking back and learning what happened with the pandemic, but moving forward, we can make sure that the small businesses that our women run, which PS, one big problem, we have 300, I mentioned 65,000 reliable small businesses that we know that exist. 300 of those are the ones that we have a reliable data source that are actually women run. We know that there are many, many more, but they're invisible to us. And so a lot of it is making sure that we're finding that data and making sure that none of those women that are leading, they're basically helping their households survive and thrive, get left behind just because of lack of information or lack of access to financial tools.
So I was on mute, but I laughed out loud because we're talking about invisible women a lot within the Women's Fund. And we're going to be talking about invisible women in December in our next Impact Collaborative. So boy, Martha, did you ever tee us up? And Viviana, that one was for you. Go ahead, Natalie, please tell us what you're seeing.
Sure. So I mentioned that I'm new to Catalyst this week, but I have worked in Miami-Dade County since I graduated from school, and I consider the problem that we are all collectively solving to be the same and a thread throughout. I have a couple slides, if you can indulge me. I came from the university world, worked at FIU for about 7 years before I moved into health philanthropy, and then now at Catalyst. So I know at Catalyst, what I love about our mission and our work is that we are deeply interested in prosperity and thriving. And there's so many ways to think about it. I mentioned that I've always kind of operated in these health worlds, and I always think about different health outcomes and indicators. There is one indicator that I think can kind of step in for an idea of thriving, and it's life expectancy. Some of this data is a couple years old, but I wanted to point out and kind of have some conversation around what kind of problems we're seeing in terms of just how long are people living, right? That is a great way to think about is someone thriving, whether they're living into middle age or old age. And so actually, if you look at the median life expectancy at the county level, especially compared to other counties in the state of Florida, and especially compared to national data, Miami-Dade County is doing pretty well. And in fact, we're improving. So this is a data set from 2019, but if you look at last year's data, I think it's just before the pandemic, Miami-Dade County moves up to about 82 average life expectancy, whereas in the country, the median life expectancy is actually declining. Women tend to live longer in the national data set, and women's life expectancy is about 80, whereas men are at about 75. So that's where the declining life expectancy that median kind of averages out with the men's life expectancy. So if you looked at county level data, you might think, okay, Miami-Dade, we're doing just fine. However, there are wide disparities. Camila, can we go back quickly? And I'll move this along quick. Thank you. If you start looking at the zip code level, and so many of you have probably heard, if not, let me introduce you to a common saying that oftentimes our zip code is more important to our health and our thriving and our well-being than our genetic code. And you can see in zip codes that are separated by just a few miles. I mean, 33136, that's downtown Miami, where we see the I-95 and the expressways are right there over 33136. And then 33149, just a couple miles away across the bridge in Key Biscayne, beautiful waters and large homes. And we know sort of what's going on across the bridge. Next slide, please. And so some people might be thinking, why are some neighborhoods so much healthier than others? Actually, we all can probably start suspecting. I suppose I'm preaching somewhat to the choir on this call. But I know we have a lot of policymakers and interest groups that might suggest that it's personal behavior, that it's what people choose to do. Maybe it's genetics. And I wanted to actually lay out at an even more granular level at the census tract. So zip code is about tens of thousands of individuals. Census tract is about thousands, if not hundreds. So you're really at the neighborhood level. And thanks to the Health Council of South Florida, who supplies this data. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the data set that the Women's Fund puts out. What I did is I actually went through and found a couple census tracts that are in lower life expectancy neighborhoods. One is in Gladeview, which is in Liberty City, Southeast Hialeah in Hialeah. And then Lagos, for those of you who are not familiar with Lagos, it's where Shakira and Tom Brady and all sorts of well-known, well-resourced individuals live. And you can see when it comes to health behaviors, when we kind of anchor it to county level data, it's kind of all over the place. You see like binge drinking is higher, and we know alcohol connects to all sorts of negative outcomes. In the Lagos, the higher life expectancy neighborhood. And then rates of mammograms and insufficient sleep and smoking, you can see that everyone's not doing so great relative to this kind of anchor and baseline that we have at the county level. Next slide, please. So why are so many communities healthier than others? On this side, I think the picture comes into a little bit more focus. So the high life expectancy neighborhood, you can see we're talking about economic mobility today, and we pulled a couple indicators talking about economics and just what are people's financial status. You can see median household income is 10 times higher in the high life expectancy zip code. Poverty level is dramatically lower. Rate of uninsured, that's health insurance, right? Just access to healthcare, which we know that lacking access to healthcare can connect to bankruptcy very quickly. You know, healthcare access is important to maintain health, but it's also an important financial protection. And even rates of civic engagement, you see census low response is significantly lower. So you have more people responding to the census in the high life expectancy neighborhood. Next slide, please. So back in 1860, a well-known writer and philosopher, Ralph Waldo Emerson, wrote that the first wealth is health. But the reality of today is simply wealth is health. Next slide. And then I think any conversation around disparities in Miami-Dade County is absolutely incomplete unless we recognize the role of racism in those health disparities. And so that first map that I showed, that showed the differences in life expectancy across zip codes. This is a comparison map that was actually put together by a team of researchers, including some folks from Catalyst Miami a number of years ago. It's called The Color of Wealth in Miami. It's an incredible report. I see heads nodding of people who have seen it. But you can see there's absolutely a correlation at the census tract level across the racial and ethnic characteristics of neighborhoods and how long we're expecting to see people live. So with that, like I said, the problem I think is the same. And I'm looking forward to talking about solutions because I know some of this can be a little disheartening. You know, we're talking about differences in 17 years of life, 22 years of life, and it's really dramatic. I think we won't consider Miami-Dade a community where folks are thriving until everyone gets the same amount of life. Thank you.
Let that one sink in. That is the segment of what you should know. And now we're going to go into the segment of what you can do, because you know what, Miami-Dade County, there is always something that you can do. Help us by going ahead and participating in the poll. That's not too hard. And I'm going to share a wonderful pool and tool that our board chair, Gloria Romero Roses, shared with us just to kick this off. In the chat, you're going to see a way to get your child tax credit, how to claim that. This is a resource that's there. It's ours. The government is our government. And those financial pools are there for those who have children 17 and under. Please do click on that link and share it with everybody in your concentric circles that can utilize that tool. And we're going to go ahead and talk about solutions. Lindsay, what have you got for us?
Thank you. So I gave a teaser before about what Miami Connected is and what its goals are, but now I'm going to dive in and tell you specifically, like, how are we addressing this gap in digital access? So we're doing it in three main ways. And the first thing, and the thing we are like laser focused on right now, is that digital access piece. So we are sponsoring 2 years of free high quality internet to low income families, no strings attached. So Miami-Dade public schools and their families, they are eligible to sign up and get 2 years free internet, no cost to them. It's a wonderful opportunity. We're also starting to expand and offer it to charter schools. And maybe there's families who are attending a private school, but for some reason don't have access at home. Like, we know there's a lot of needs kind of just outside the traditional Miami-Dade public schools. We are being flexible and we are partnering and doing our best to reach everybody who does not have internet that needs to get internet in our community. Because we know that without a broadband connection at home, the under-resourced learners can't have the resources that they need to thrive. And so COVID-19 really just highlighted this problem, as disconnected students weren't able, and also families weren't able to kind of participate in what is the new normal. Homework is being done online. It's not worksheets at home, like it's assignments on the computer. So we really need to make sure that it's not just access at school, that they have the access at home to continue their learning at home. We see how much more education is reliant on the internet, and we want to give them stable internet connection. We know that during the pandemic, short-term solutions like little hotspots were offered, which were really helpful, but we heard resoundingly from the community that while that was temporarily helpful, it didn't give them the actual kind of access that they needed because it was so spotty, and didn't give them kind of just full access that was critical to do jobs and do the schoolwork. So Comcast is our main partner in providing the service. We are working with community-based nonprofit organizations, with the school district, with a number of partners, and really going student by student to try and get them this offering. Our goal is 22,000 students and families in this first year, and then 100,000 is our ultimate goal. And in addition to kind of that student by student approach, we're also exploring kind of in partnership with government and other partners, like how can we, power up a whole city block to have internet access, or a building to have that access. And so those are models we're exploring, but in the meantime, we are going to schools, making presentations to the teachers, to the PTAs, making sure that everybody knows about this opportunity, and then actually getting on the phone with Comcast, with the families, to actually get them signed up, holding their hand through the process in multiple languages to make it as smooth as possible. The second piece of this program is about digital literacy. So we want to make sure that adults, the parents of these students, also have access to opportunity. So we're providing digital literacy training opportunities so that all Miamians can actually build that toolbox and become digitally fluent. We know that access to technology and the developing of digital literacy, it's not distributed equally across all communities. There is a technology divide out there, and we know that those skills are really essential to building a 21st century kind of workforce. Education and the workforce really demand digital literacy. And so in Miami, where technology jobs grew at 82% over the past decade, digital literacy really actually ensures access to high-paying jobs. And so we see this as critical to the future of our community. And we just actually completed our first digital literacy pilot as part of Miami Connected. We partnered with community-based organizations to enroll the families that they work with in a digital literacy training program. Fun fact, 80% of the people who attended were actually women. So it's women that are raising their hands and signing up for these opportunities to attend the digital literacy coursework. And we plan to scale those digital literacy training programs in 2022. And the final piece of the work is workforce opportunities. And so that's about creating pipelines for underrepresented groups in the technology workforce. And so this is going to be a 2022 priority of Miami Connected that we'll be addressing, because we recognize that the lack of digital literacy skills is holding back job seekers from accessing those high-paying competitive jobs in the technology sector. Those are the jobs that are coming to Miami, and we want to make sure that everybody has access to them. And so there's pipeline issues that, in technology workforce that we're hoping to address through Miami Connected. So as Miami just continues to become an international hub for technology, for innovation, our region really needs to invest in opportunities to address digital equity and ensure that everybody has access to those jobs. And so we look forward to partnering with many of the organizations that are part of this conversation and other communities around here to ensure access to those jobs. This has been a deep partnership. We are not doing this alone. As I stated at the beginning, nothing the Miami Foundation does is alone, and Miami Connected is no different. We have the school district with us. We have nonprofit partners. We have schools. We're going to be working with companies as we think about workforce opportunities. And so we're learning as we go as a group. And so we really feel that is the most effective way to reach those that are disconnected. We invite you, the audience, other panelists, to help us spread the word about Miami Connected, especially right now on the access and literacy piece. We're happy to give you tools, flyers to share at schools, to share with your friends, and just, again, be a partner with us in this effort, because it is a community-wide effort. So appreciate the opportunity that we had to share this. And I'm going to slide in there. We're actually hiring for somebody on the Miami Connected team. So if you have somebody you know who would be interested in joining kind of our outreach efforts, we're hiring for a Miami Connected fellow. That'll be a minimum 2-year position. Awesome opportunity to work at the Miami Foundation and help spread digital access through this initiative.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Stronger together. Olivia, continue on. Tell us more.
Righty. So where connecting people to the appropriate resources and connecting people to power is the problem, building an infrastructure where our community is able to kind of have something that facilitates these connections is key. And Labor Miami is a tool that serves to be that solution. So as you see on the screen, it says Labor Miami, your connection to Miami small businesses and workforce resources. And I'm going to describe a little bit more what that means in the next slide. So like Lindsay kind of described with with Miami Connected, Labor Miami is similarly, its origin similarly come from addressing pain points that the Miami Foundation, alongside our other partners, have identified as key barriers to why people are not getting connected to key workforce resources. So Labor Miami comes in to be a free, centralized, easy to access and comprehensive online tool, like I mentioned before, that helps all Miamians identify and easily access the resources they need to thrive. Piggybacking again off of Lindsay to say that nothing that happens at the Miami Foundation happens alone. Nothing that happens in life a lot of the time happens alone, and Labor Miami is no different. Labor Miami is also kind of a collective impact effort that's driven by multiple community organizations and leaders. And though the Miami Foundation is kind of the backbone of this initiative, it truly, truly, truly is collaborative, because all of our partners have the key goal of connecting people to the resources that they need in order to get the top jobs in Miami-Dade County, as well as build the skills in order to get those jobs. So on the next slide, I also think it's important to describe what Labor Miami is not. So Labor Miami is not merely a job board. It is a lot more dynamic than that, which is why on the second bullet point, you'll see it's not a static resource. So labormiami.org is very data-driven in that it's updated very frequently. It's updated at least quarterly with new data that describes what the top jobs in their county are, as well as how many of these jobs are being posted. Additionally, we take in feedback from our partners as well as feedback from the users in order to strengthen the site. I love to say that if you were to go on Labor Miami today, and if you were to go on Labor Miami maybe 2 weeks from now, you will see a new resource on there in order to strengthen the site. How this resource works, we go to the next slide. There would have been a video, but I'm just going to describe it briefly. You all can go to labormiami.org. You all should be going to labormiami.org just in general. It's a fabulous resource, but you all can go on Labor Miami and see the how-to video of how to use this resource, as well as play around on the site. It's broken up into 5 pathways that serve 5 different demographics in Miami-Dade County, and these include students, job seekers, employers, small businesses, and entrepreneurs. And essentially what we do is, as you click through these pathways, you will intuitively be taken through a variety of resources that address a specific need. So for example, if you are a student who is looking for internship resources, you will follow the tiles through to whatever resources that you need. And like I mentioned, these resources are consistently being updated. We're consistently forming new partners. I actually see some of our partners on the call, so it's nice to see you all. We're consistently forming these partnerships to strengthen this site and strengthen the resources for all of these pathways. And the idea is that we want to not only connect you with the job, connect you with the grant, we also want to build your capacity to be successful in wherever it is that you end up in the end after following through these pathways. So on the next slide, you will see, like, once again, it goes beyond a job board in that we provide a variety of wraparound services and additional resources to really strengthen and build the capacity of the user in order to get whatever it is that you're looking for. If you're a small business looking for capital, we really want to build your capacity to do so and build your capacity to be a great business owner. And we don't want anything to be a barrier. So we've collected these resources, which include disability support, childcare, language services, all of these things that kind of eliminate the barriers to you getting the resource that you need. And we can go to the next slide. We will be answering questions throughout. So we can go to the last slide where it's just a thank you again. I'd like to echo all of that was said before, where we truly are always looking to make this as collaborative as possible. So if you are ever looking to connect with me or connect with this resource, please do so. I'd love to highlight any of your organizations or any of your resources on this site in order to strengthen it. And if nothing else, please visit labormiami.org, tell a friend to tell a friend. And if you need anything like flyers and our presentations, please do not hesitate to reach out.
I think that's going to happen. Marta.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maria. Alrighty, so I have one slide. If you can go to the next one, Camila. Yeah, this one. So actually, we're just going to use this slide for this portion. To talk a little bit about what Access is and the opportunities therein. But I do want to preface this by saying Access launched really at the height of people in our community, small business owners, parents, people that were under extreme duress. They were losing their livelihoods. Their family was getting sick. They didn't know how they were going to move forward. And so we took a very intentional approach when we designed it, and then have continued that, and that's really served us well. Access is very heavily curated, and one of the things it's all of the language is user-centered, very user-driven. So one of the things that one of the ways that we accomplish that is that we provide a very simple and direct interface, and we have limited options, right? It's not like you're going to get a million choices the moment you get to the website. You'll be able to begin to navigate. Are you looking for support for your individual, because you're an individual, you need to support your family. Maybe, again, you need to make that rent payment, or you need resources for food. Maybe you need support as a small business owner, and there's a slew of opportunities and programs that can support you. But every step of the way through Access is sort of this like limited options. We've done taken a lot of the guesswork. You don't have to think too much. It's more focused around the user and the user's need. One of the things that we've been immensely grateful for is that second image on the right is our A team. We call it our A team, our Access team. They have been a set of organizations, and Natalie, you're now a part of the team of one of them. But they have been a set of organizations that have been with us from the very beginning, and each one of these organizations is meshed into the resources that we provide, and they are there to provide additional support completely for free, and then the entire website is free. But that's one of the most amazing things is this group has actually grown in the last couple of weeks, so we have a couple more to add, but it really has been a wonderful opportunity to be able to say, you're trying to apply for this loan program or maybe this business grant. The folks over at Branches can answer your questions and help guide the way if you really need additional support. And each resource is matched with those service providers. And then finally, one of the I think the thing that we spend the most amount of time on. We do the digesting of the information. The folks coming to Access generally, they've got a lot going on. They probably have a lot of needs, even though there's we've curated the resources. There's still quite a few resources to come through. So we digest all of that information and help people understand if should you apply for this? Do you meet these simple criteria? What do you need to do in order to get started? We've actually taken all of these applications, all of these programs, we've done them. We've submitted, we've gone through the application process, we've called the numbers. So we kind of know where the pitfalls are. And each page on Access very clearly articulates all of those different steps and sort of demystifies the process. One of the other things about Access is that it's available in 3 languages, the 3 main, not that we only speak 3 languages in Miami-Dade, but it is a predominant 3 languages, English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole. A couple of additional things. Access is updated on a weekly basis. Resources, we learned this very quickly. Resources, particularly anything that was pandemic related early on, they would change overnight. And so we developed that habit of making sure that we were checking deadline dates, parameters, whatever the criteria, whatever the case might be on a weekly basis. So everything is updated weekly or more often as new resources pop up. We also offer a newsletter so you can get new resources to your inbox on a bi-monthly basis. And most of the resources are filterable. So for instance, in our small business world, if you go down the pathway of grants, you can see all of the grants that are specific for women-owned businesses, or all of the grants that are specific for minority-owned businesses. You can even, in some of the instances, you can see the opportunities that are specific to individuals that maybe don't have a full residency yet, and so maybe they have immigration status challenges that they're working through, but they're still eligible for some resources. Finally, I do want to leave you with one thing, and I'm going to drop this link in the chat. Recently, we launched a page that is very specific on lending. Man, the world of lending for small businesses, the world of access to capital in any regard is incredibly complex. And we needed to piece that together because, again, we're digesting information so that we can present it in a kind of coherent and simple way. And we needed to take a step back and scan our ecosystem, understand what was out there, and then ended up never finding anything like this. So we ended up putting it together. It's essentially a navigator that helps small business owners understand the world of lending. We sort of identified 9 discrete buckets of where a small business would get money from. Maybe it's a credit union, maybe it's a merchant cash advance that maybe isn't a great option. And so we've taken each one of those, explained what they are, because if you're navigating online and trying to find, they all look somewhat similar, but the programs are incredibly different. What is a CDFI? They're really great resources that are very local, they're place-based, and they provide very low interest small business funding, but they're difficult to find sometimes. So we've broken all of that down and have continued to build on this world of small business access to capital and helping people not just navigate it, but also really understand so that when it comes time for them to make a decision, they're informed and they feel empowered. And the last thing I just want to leave you with, this maybe belongs in the problem statement, like in the earlier section, but it really, this lending piece is really particularly important for women. We learned while we were doing our ecosystem scan that actually Miami-Dade County offers exactly 0 small business lending opportunities that are specific to women. We have loans and similar opportunities that are for Black or African American communities, minority communities, Hispanic. We have nothing for women. And it's an interesting opportunity and an interesting inflection point for us to begin understanding the specific needs that women-owned businesses have in order to just thrive and potentially grow. So that's part of where we are focused next, as we on the back end build out our data dashboard and help understand where these women-owned businesses are and really what their needs are. But with that, thank you again, and I'll turn it back over to Maria.
Thank you so much for highlighting that, Marta. We say here, we care about the entire community, but if we fail to put on the gender lens, we're going to miss a lot. And that happens consistently, and we all do it. So it's great. Thanks for coming together and highlighting that need to focus with a gender lens. Natalie.
Thank you so much. And it's so amazing to see how many brilliant people are committed to creating so much good in this community. So I have 2 quick slides, and I'll talk a little bit about, so Catalyst Miami really has 2 approaches to fulfilling its mission. So one side is the community economic development arm, which is where my team and the Prosperity Campaign is housed. And then we also have a really strong and robust policy advocacy and civic engagement arm. And both of these programs work side by side to make sure that we fulfill our mission and to try to help communities thrive. And I know from both perspectives, we do a lot of collaborating with different organizations and lots of folks that are represented on this call. I mentioned that I am a sort of advocate at heart. Even though I've worked in all these healthcare settings, I do sort of identify as a public interest lawyer. I know we have some on the call, and there's often this metaphor of a sword and shield thrown around in the advocacy space, the shield being defensive, just sort of defending from all the injustice that is out there in the world and our underinvested communities and systemic challenges that we face. And then the sword being the offensive. And I think in Catalyst Miami's programming, we take the approach of both sword and shield. The Prosperity Campaign does both. And so we have some of the programming that we offer and programs that we offer access to, like health insurance, right? I mentioned, what better defense to preventing medical bankruptcy is there than ensuring that people just have that protection, and it can also just preserve their health. And so our team of coaches who are brilliant, amazing service providers are providing assistance in terms of health insurance enrollment for Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act, which we're currently in the open enrollment period, and they provide Affordable Care Act enrollment throughout the year as well, and we'll be providing that over the next few years. Also generally with public assistance programs. So, I think this is something that also comes up for older adults, especially, or for folks who may be encountering challenges going to work because of some medical conditions or challenges. So just getting help applying for public assistance programs. Again, sort of defending from the worst impacts of poverty is ensuring people have access to these public assistance programs. And then our coaches devote a lot of time to financial coaching, supporting small businesses. And so on the individual financial coaching side, it's improving credit scores and ensuring people have access to loans. And, I think Joan laid it out so well about the different disparities that we see in terms of women having access to financial institutions. And our coaches are very equipped in ensuring that women and individuals are able to access these important, really aspects of financial well-being. Tax preparation is a huge one, probably a little bit more of a shield when you're thinking about strategy, right? Just making sure everyone is complying with the 2 certainties in life, death and taxes. And one of the newer initiatives, and I think this is super consistent with the work that the Miami Foundation is doing and thinking about just ensuring access, that what Lindsay was talking about, especially, during the pandemic, we recognize that we have all of this great tech programming, and yet there's a significant tech gap. Both the physical infrastructure of technology, but also technology literacy for certain communities. And so we do some work around ensuring that people and families have access to affordable phone and internet access. And then again, thinking about the sword, all of these direct services complement and connect to the policy and advocacy work. Many of you may know Zelalem. She leads an amazing team of individuals at Catalyst who are always getting the community together to show up at meetings, community meetings, and participate in budgeting and talking to elected officials. And so, these conversations and these direct services that we're providing day in, day out are reflected in some of the advocacy priorities, because these systems were intentionally created to be unjust in many ways. And so it's really important that the community that knows best is involved in shaping and improving the systems. And then on the next slide, there we go. Stay in touch. Subscribe to our newsletter. Please follow us on all the social medias. We'd love to collaborate and connect. And again, really looking forward to what's to come from this conversation.
Fantastic. We're going to ask Joanne to join our Q&A section here. We're going to ask you all to keep on posting your questions. Most of them are here in the chat. I see them. You can put them in the Q&A as well. Please do fill in the poll. And we're going to go on to the Q&A right now. And we're going to start with Malia, who runs Leap for Ladies. Malia, please do go ahead and share the information about Leap. I know you're not the only Leaper here. There's more than one of you. You all are amazing. Thank you for what you do. Please share it in the chat. Malia's question is, with regards to digital access, are there any resources for free or reduced cost computers? So the hardware. Lindsay, I think that's for you.
Yeah, happy to try and address that. So one of the first things we did as part of Miami Connected when it launched, in partnership with Miami-Dade County using Federal CARES Act funding, $5 million was put towards getting laptops in the hands of students and their families right at the beginning of the pandemic. And so we know that only addressed part of the need for the community, and it was really very much focused on kind of student computer needs. But it is something we're aware of. We understand that, in addition to working internet, they need a good device. And so we actually are in talks right now with some potential funders about that need for capital for organizations and for our community members, which includes technology and equipment for the organizations and for the communities they serve. So while I don't have the solution right now, it is something we're talking about and trying to actively raise money for so that we can provide that as a resource in the community in the future.
Terrific. If anybody else has any kind of resources that they want to highlight, please hop in. And if not, we're going to go on to the next question. Sonia asked, how can an agency get onto the Access website? There are a couple of questions for you that I see you already answered, Martha, but please share them with everybody and start with that one. If an agency wants to be collaborating with you, what do they have to do?
Really easy. Just reach out to me. I did drop my email address in the chat. You can reach out to me at marta@urbanimpactlab.com. I will forward it on to our program manager. We'll, figure out the right fit, or possibly if you have more than one program, the right fits. And then the other question that was asked was, sorry, bear with me as I scroll back.
Is how much traffic is Access receiving? And how do you get people? And that's a really great question, for everybody. It affects all of us. How do you get to people who are under duress? These women who many times are working 2 or 3 jobs, doing 2.5 times of the unpaid work, like Joanne highlighted. How do we make this easier and get people to the resources that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. So Access has to date, since we launched about 18 months ago, we've had about 250,000 visitors, and we have about 80,000 consistent users now. We've accomplished that in a number of ways, and I just have to put a plug out there for this. There is, particularly with, just in the way that people consume information, we can create the most wonderful website, but resources have to be allocated to get on the ground. And, like, I just kudos to Lindsay, where our team is working with her right now on this exact effort around the child tax credit and the EITC, if I'm not butchering that acronym. I get my acronyms pretty messed up most of the time. So, I mean, a lot of it is, yes, we digest information, we put it on a website, we leverage social media and our partners, but we also need to get on the ground. Now there's strategic ways to do that. We did that with the Miami-Dade County. We worked with their public housing department, and we made sure that we understood. We made maps. Urban Impact Lab is big on data, so we are super nerdy that way, but we made maps internally. We understood where individuals that were living at the target AMI lived, and we kind of put a couple other parameters into that map. So we found the hot spots, if you will, those places where we really needed to concentrate and flood with a street team. We didn't do that over a long period of time. We did that over a few weeks, but that was a tremendous opportunity for people, and it's one of the reasons that Miami-Dade County is the only place in the entire United States that got all of its rental assistance dollars out the door. Most other communities across the United States got about 30% of those federally allocated dollars out to the people that needed them. Miami-Dade County got 100%. That was an amazing feat. And that meant for our community that the federal agencies are willing now to put more dollars in to those rent relief efforts. So those are the ways that we accomplish. And of course, we don't do that alone. It's an amazing group of individuals. Some that are with us here today, others like the folks at Miami Homes for All. That was a great partner in this. The folks at Alapata Collaborative. So it really is a community effort. But there's some strategic ways to do that. And then similarly with small businesses, we had a RISE fund that was targeted for small businesses that couldn't take advantage of those PPP loans. And again, we hit the ground. It was just part of the effort. So I think we're really proud of the tech platform or the tech-enabled platform. But I think it's important for none of us to walk away with thinking that technology is the solution. Technology is just a tool. We have to get out into our communities and find people where they're at and share that information with them. So that was a lot more than the questions asked, but yeah.
It's perfectly addressed. And the next question is really a comment. It gives all of us an opportunity to maybe go, like you just did, Marta, a little bit deeper on what you've each spoken about. So Gloria Romero Roses, our board chair, is asking, as we consider all of the challenges that are being addressed through the various initiatives that you're spotlighting, the key to amplifying these resources is to ensuring greater participation and access, right? Like you just said. Often organizations in Miami operate in silos because everybody's busy. But how can we do better? Can you please address what collaboration looks like? Additionally, knowing how expansive the federal packages being negotiated in Congress could be to support the social determinants of health, increase broadband access, mobility infrastructure expansion, elder care services, child care, which is huge, and you'll be hearing more about from your Women's Fund. How can we proactively prepare for greater collaboration to rapidly deploy these resources? I'm going to ask who wants to go first?
I'm happy to try and jump in on at least pieces of that. I'd say from the Miami Foundation lens, we know, as I shared before, like we can't do any of this alone, and especially as it relates to partnering with government, local, state, federal, private philanthropic resources can't compare to the financial resources that come through partnering with government. Like we saw that last year during COVID. we managed to lead the biggest ever nonprofit recovery program. $11.3 million got moved to nonprofits in our community who were dealing with the impacts of COVID. And we would not have been able to do that and get the money in the hands of organizations if it were not for government and their trust in us, having partnered with us in small ways over the years, trusting us to run a massive effort like that. And so we realized the power of that partnership. We are on a daily basis working to cultivate those relationships. So when there are dollars available, that government looks to nonprofit partners and foundation partners to help move the money to the communities in need, because we are closer on the ground to the people being impacted. And so we know it's important. And similarly, partnering with nonprofits in the way that Miami Foundation knows, we are good at raising the money, but we work on it with our nonprofit partners who actually have the direct connection to community to help make things happen in our community. So it's critical to everything that we do.
I'm happy to add there too, Maria. You can go first, Marta, because my guess is that I'll wrap things up a bit when it comes to collaboration. Are you sure? Okay, so I want to address the elephant in the room when it comes to collaboration, right? The reality is that sometimes, or many times, right, nonprofits mean very well because we're very close to the need, right? So we're very, very focused on that direct service that oftentimes many nonprofit leaders or nonprofit teams forget to either zoom out on purpose and look sideways, right? So it sounds very simple, but the reality is that it's kind of like a mindset shift, because you have to do several things if you are a social impact worker, right? Or a social impact advocate, as Natalie was saying. Yes, be close to the need. Yes, be close to your communities and make sure what they're needing, but make sure that you're also making time in your busy agenda during the week to look sideways. And what that means is that you need to find yourselves in rooms that you're not the smarter person in that room, right? So always continue to learn new things, to learn new trends, to learn about topics that are not your topic. So if you're in food insecurity, go to learn about gender equality. If you're in food insecurity, go to learn about climate change, and try to find yourself in these places that make you feel uncomfortable so that you can start finding the intersection. The third thing that we always try to say to leaders at Radical Partners is, before you hire anybody else, before you start doing a thing, look sideways to see if someone is already doing it better than you. Because when it comes to nonprofit, we shouldn't be competing, we should be collaborating with each other. And sometimes that means I am not going to hire an IT person, for example, at RP, because there are organizations already doing that, right? So how can I help them pay for that service, which is something that we do very often with the Miami Foundation, right? Like, instead of building that talent, how can you work with an organization that already has that talent and finding the synergies there? And last but not least, if you don't have the time, the resources to all of that, at least coordinate. And this is something that we don't talk very often in the social impact space. When you launch a business, when you launch a product, you are forced to do market research first. Nonprofit leaders don't do that very often. So before you launch a new thing, look around to see if you're going to be adding a value. If you are, great, keep moving forward. If you're not, at least be honest and say, are you in Hialeah? Perfect. I'm going to go to Doral and do the same thing, so that we know that we are peers, we are partners in impact instead of competitors, doing a similar thing in two areas. And ideally, whenever we have some breathing room, we can think bigger and go for larger funds together, because then we could fill those gaps. So in conclusion, really try to lead with the impact versus ego mindset. Sometimes that's easy, sometimes it is not, because sometimes it means giving money to someone else. Sometimes it means letting go of a project that you love. But if you're really tied to your purpose, that's when you're gonna make smart moves and collaborate with each other.
We're going to claim you, not only RP, which is Radical Partners, but Joanne and many others here today are on our Women's Fund board. So you can tell that we're walking the walk and talking the talk. We mean it. We mean it. Natalie, please share.
I was sort of hanging back. I think this is such a big and good question, Gloria. Just coming out of the philanthropic world, I think it was amazing. And I'm sure Lindsay and Olivia may or may not share in this, but I was just so amazed to see how much collaboration is actually happening. I mean, the number of coalitions that exist in Miami-Dade County is just mind-boggling. And I think the lens from philanthropy tends to be somewhat of like hubs to see how much of this collaboration is happening. And I think, though, Gloria, like your question is such a good one, because there is a lot of coalition work going on, and I wonder how smart and actually effective it is. And that is not to say that I don't think coalition work is important, but I think coalition fatigue is a real thing. And so I don't really have an answer to that. I think this is just such a great question to reflect on. And I would love, I don't know how, the immediate thought is maybe we need a coalition task force, which is a very kind of unusual probably proposition. But and then I love just thinking about the social determinants of health. Absolutely. I think you nailed it. I kind of avoided using the terminology when I was talking about the presentation, but yeah, making sure that we leverage all of these resources. I think Marta really nailed it in terms of talking about how Miami-Dade is unique in being effective at leveraging these resources. So hopefully they continue to come to support our community. And finally, I just love John's point about being smart and looking sideways. And I dropped into the chat that I recently heard this phrase, going to the balcony, compared to being on the dance floor, that a lot of us are always on the dance floor and we're moving and working and we're in our coalitions, and that occasionally, grab a drink, grab a water, grab a glass of champagne, go up to the balcony and kind of take a look around is I think a nice way to think about it. And I see Martha's hand is up.
Thanks, Natalie. So strongly agree with everything that you both just said, and Lindsay, of course. I don't want to repeat all of the things, although I do feel like it's important to circle back on that thought of coordination. Sometimes collaboration isn't for whatever reason, it's not the thing that's in front of you, but if you can't collaborate, maybe coordinate. That might be an interesting way to think about it. But I wanted to add one additional sentiment, and I want to preface it by saying we are very data driven, but with the caveat that data doesn't have all the answers either, right? Like tech isn't the solution and data doesn't have all the answers. You have to talk to people. The nuances is where the magic happens in terms of helping people. But I think that in effective collaboration or coordination, whatever the approach, I think starting with at least an agreed upon a set of metrics that you want to track over time, and a set of outcomes that you want to achieve. I think that there's a lot of power there. I think it helps not just laser focus the work, but it also really helps organizations kind of fall back into what their sweet spot is in order to achieve those outcomes. Now, the process of setting these outcomes, sort of setting this like data-driven process, it can be laborious, and I get that. But at the same time, it really helps organizations, as you're doing it, you can't help but say, all right, like, so we want to achieve these outcomes. Now, how are we going to get here? And what are all the strategies and pieces that need to be put into place? And then it really helps organizations understand where their sweet spot is, where their lane is, so that we're not constantly stepping on everybody's toes. And we understand we kind of all have this passion for all of the work, but can be responsive to each other and sort of and take a piece that makes sense and share in the wealth. As Joanne rightly pointed out, a coordinated effort is one where more investors are going to want to bring additional funds, and because of their impact, their dollars are going to go further. So I think that's an important piece to, I think, consider moving forward as well.
Olivia.
And I just wanted to add, I agree with everything everyone said so far, but previous to my work at the Miami Foundation, I come from a space of community-based research as well as advocacy. And something I'd like to offer is that through our collaborations and through our coordinations and through our data, I think it's important to find ways, however we can do this, to actually include the communities that we're hoping to serve, those lay folks on the ground who, for whatever reason, may not know about what it is we're trying to do, but what it is we're trying to do will be beneficial to them in the end. And I think that many a time people on the ground, our lay community, they want to be involved with our initiatives, but they just don't know how, and no one's reached out quite yet to include them in a planning way or in a foundation building type of way. So I think that that's equally important to how we leverage these collaborations and these coordinations that we were just talking about, is also tapping into the resource that is our community and that is our community, but also is rooted in our community's expertise of themselves, and really tapping into their own knowledge of what it is that they want and need and how it is that they want us to serve them.
Very well said. Yeah, if everybody were unmuted, you'd hear a lot of noise, a lot of applause there. Thank you. We're gonna go quick through a couple of last questions. Florida, asked Judith, Florida having one of the highest incarceration rates in the country. What if anything is your organization doing or able to do to address the special needs of this system impacted population? And let's add the gender lens, women who have been experiencing incarceration. Who can take that?
I can start us off if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
So on labormiami.org, like I mentioned, we kind of are home base to a bunch of different resources that serve a variety of different populations. And one of the resources that we offer, or one of the resource buckets that we offer, are for reentry services. I'd love to type that in. I answered the question by sending a link. Were you all able to see that pop up somewhere?
No, but maybe you could use the chat for that.
Yeah, okay, let's try to put it in the chat. But yeah, so we do offer, we have that collection of resources available on our site already, and we're also kind of working with a variety of other partners to strengthen the resource, to provide those gender specific and demographic specific resources as well, to kind of take it a little bit further than just hosting the resources on the site. So were we able to?
Mm-hmm. It's there.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, it's in the Q&A answered portion, but you can also add it to the main chat. It'll be easier for everybody to find.
But yes.
Terrific. Does anybody else have anything specific for our friends at LEAP?
Yeah, I'll add something, and I'm stepping up here to not stepping up. It's like talking about some of the organizations in the room, because I would say that a big step that many of us have, right? Catalyst with their services, Access Help with their services, Radical Partners with our services. We don't ask for anybody's backgrounds for many of the things, right? And that is unfortunately enough, huge enough for people to not have to explain anything about their past. We have a leader, Amanda Santiago. She always says it's very hard to be judged by the one big mistake you made in your life. So that's a great thing, right? Like that you can enter without having to share your story and having to share your past for you to access any of these things. But I am also going to highlight some of the organizations that are not on this digital stage. Judith, one of them is LEAP, right? They work inside the establishment, working around entrepreneurship with women inside, so that they're ready.
Judith is from LEAP, actually. Just
okay.
To say, yes,
so you get a shout
we love
out,
LEAP.
You get a shout out, Judith. So yeah, if you are inside, you know more than many of us, right?
Oh,
so the idea is that when these people are out, that they are they are facing or having plenty of resources and people and other organizations that are ready to re-welcome them to society and to go through that process that we know is very hard for many of them.
Terrific. So some people will have to drop off at exactly 10:30 sharp, like Lindsay has to. We will end the full program at 10:30 sharp, so don't worry. And if a few of you want to stay a few minutes afterwards, we can continue to connect in the chat. Rosemary has started an amazing organization which does address the need, 305 Pink Pack, and they're working with people who have suffered or experiencing breast cancer. And Rosemary, in our poll, we did offer the opportunity for organizations to connect with the panelists, but we also invite you all to connect via the chat with one another. And Camila and Vivi and our team are really happy to follow up with anyone. We believe that with each thread that we weave together, we create a stronger fabric for our community. And that's what we are about. So that's the reason we're here. And so Rosemary, if there's somebody that you saw here today, you know how to find us. We know because we're connected, as many of us are. So we want to thank you all, but please stay on for 1 sec. And let's talk about next steps. Hit the next slide for me. So Natalie's joining our Raise the Bar host committee. That's our signature event that happens every year with the legal community, judges, people who work in the legal community. It's going to be a gorgeous indoor, outdoor event and another touch point for us to share what we're doing. So thank you so much for those of you who are involved to join us there. Those of you who are able to fuel our grand mission. Obviously, we can't show up and we can't drive here to our central plaza if we don't have fuel. So thank you for your financial support. And those are some of the people who have supported us to date, our grand mission honor roll. Don't forget to do the survey. It'll be in your inbox the second that you hang up here, but don't hang up yet because we want to remind you that you are here with us the first Thursday of every single month. We're going to be having a really fun end to the year. We want you to join us for an infuriating and fun Final Impact Collaborative 2021 leadership, smashing the pink tax, the price we pay as, did I tell you, invisible women. Yes. It's not only the pink tax about your dry cleaning, it's also about our health, our life expectancy, our access to all kinds of leadership. Please join us a month from today, December 2nd. And thank you all so much for being here. This is your Women's Fund. So thanks for being those who show up. Unmute yourselves, panelists. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Farewell.
Thank you, ladies.
Amazing panel.
And amazing folks here who
Amazing
joined
audience.
us.
Such
Yes.
great engagement.
Real people doing real work. And hopefully it doesn't, how do we do this? How do we continue to share these resources? How do we make sure it doesn't end here? So we keep on iterating. Not only can we repeat and review these impact collaboratives, but it's how do we keep on sharing resources? How do we leverage one another's work? Traditionally, the Women's Fund has had resources on some of the ways we started most, some of those coalitions, the domestic violence and human trafficking, but there are many other resources that we're starting to share. We started with health because of conversations with Catalyst and Opalaka Development Corporation. We ended up realizing that there was new information that nobody knew about heat and extreme stress of extreme heat on pregnancy. And so we've joined another coalition of a healthier Miami-Dade. How do we all leverage each other's services, end up in one another's toolkits? And as the Women's Fund continues to iterate and try and keep on putting on that gender lens for resources, we not only have the dashboard that Viviana and the team put together 140 orgs that give services to women and girls. So that's on our dashboard. It's in a landscape report, but it's also a live alone, interactive, searchable, how to find orgs resource. But then there are others. I mean, from all that was spoken about here today, I can see all kinds of other resources that should be available and we should be able to cross-pollinate. So I see a lot of nodding. What do you think, Natalie? You're in, right?
Yeah, sounds great. All
John?
Smarter collaboration.
Vivi's like, I'm thinking about how to do it. I'm thinking. Okay.
Sadly, I have to run to prep for another event. So wonderful to see all of you and meet you, Olivia, and have a wonderful day. I'll see some of you later, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Good luck.
Have a great event.
Bye, Marta. Hope everything goes well.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah,
Also,
thank
have
you. This was
a
great.
great day, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for